Hi, welcome to Best in Tesla. So, hydrogen is not just hydrogen. There are different shades of hydrogen. Because remember, hydrogen, even though it's the most abundant thing in the universe, it is not an energy source. You can't just dig it up from the ground and put it in your car. You have to create it out of something. So depending on how you make it, depends on how green it is. Just like electricity, if your electricity comes from a coal plant, it's not really a green fuel for your car, is it? But neither is hydrogen. But hydrogen is much more complicated and energy heavy to make. And even if we're talking about the so-called green hydrogen and making from water, the byproduct of splitting water into H2 is CO2, the sinner itself. So that is why we have to look at the way hydrogen is made. And when we do that and dive into that, it becomes very clear how dumb this solution is. And we already know about its limits, but battery technology has only just begun. So let's just take a look at hydrogen and why this is such a stupid idea, and why that will not really change much in the future, and why renewables and batteries have only just begun. So let's dive right in. So what are the different shades of hydrogen? Well, let's start with the one that we are after, and that is green hydrogen. Green hydrogen is defined as hydrogen is produced by electrolysis process where we split water into hydrogen and oxygen using renewable energies. So that's the key thing there. We have to use renewable energies to get green hydrogen. Gray hydrogen is produced with fossil fuel. Gray hydrogen is traditionally produced from methane, CH4, split with steam into CO2, the main sinner of the climate change, and H2O hydrogen. Gray hydrogen has increasingly been produced from coal as well, with significantly higher CO2 emission per unit of hydrogen produced, so much that it's often called brown or black hydrogen instead of gray. It is produced at an industrial scale today with associated emission comparable to the combined emission of the UK and Indonesia. The use of grey hydrogen entails substantial CO2 emission, which makes these hydrogen technologies unsustainable for the route towards net zero emission. Then we have blue hydrogen. This is where we capture the CO2 from the electrolysis process. So it's basically just grey hydrogen with a CO2 capture and storage. So that makes it better when it comes to CO2 emission, of course, and the CO2 captured is usually used to create synthetic fuels. The main advantage of these fuels is that they can be used to replace the fossil fuel-based counterparts and in many cases be used as a direct replacement, that is a drop-in fuel. But synthetic fuels produce carbon emission though when combusted. But if their production process consumes the same amount of CO2, in principle it allows them to have a net zero carbon emission, but they still emit toxic gases within our cities, so no thank you. I do not want to use synthetic fuels either, even though it's made from capturing CO2, but that is CO2 we created by making hydrogen. So today hydrogen production is mostly based on natural gas and coal, which together account for 95% of the production. Currently there is no significant hydrogen production from renewable sources. The green hydrogen has been limited to demonstration projects. Hydrogen output is mostly used to crude oil refining and ammonia and methanol, which together represent almost 75% of the combined pure and mixed hydrogen demand. So we are not even close to have something scalable for green hydrogen. But we need to get to zero emissions, so the only hydrogen solution we can use is the green hydrogen. But this is where it gets kind of stupid. First of all, it is very, very costly to produce hydrogen. Green hydrogen produced using electricity on an average plant in 2019 would be 2 to 3 times more expensive than grey hydrogen. That is still more expensive than fossil fuel, and that is still more expensive than just filling up your car with electricity in the first place. So this is just stupid all on its own. But the car and trucks that can be run on hydrogen are also very expensive, 1.5 to 2 times more expensive than the fossil fuel counterpart. So it is also more expensive than the BEV, and the BEV is about to become cheaper than even the ICE car over the next 5 years. And as we all know, they are already much cheaper in maintenance. But wait, it gets even dumber. We are also lacking the whole infrastructure for hydrogen. What we have built up over the last 120 years for the fossil fuel industry, we have to build up all over again. So the people screaming about the grid can't handle it, we have to build a whole new grid if we're going electric. But it can handle some of it, and we are building a lot more renewables and battery storage plants as we speak, making houses small power plants themselves, taking them off the grid, helping stabilizing the grid. We have virtual power plants, and we are getting community power plants made from renewables, and that will save the community millions of dollars because electricity from renewables is much cheaper than from fossil fuel and can be controlled with software like AutoBidder, so everyone in the community will have to pay less, just as we have seen in the communities in Australia that got the Hornsdale power plant, freeing up money for every member in the community, bringing more wealth to the community. This is a good problem to solve, but hydrogen is only an expense. There are only about 5,000 kilometers of hydrogen transmission pipelines around the world today, compared to around 3 million kilometers for just natural gas. And we don't need all of this for the electric car. And in the US and in most of Europe and China and other places, the infrastructure is already good enough for the electric car user, as myself. And we can make electricity everywhere. There are already people today making their own electricity in their homes with their solar and batteries, charging their cars and running their entire house. And there are only about 500 hydrogen refueling stations in the entire world. They haven't even begun building the infrastructure. This will make the problem of the grid look like a joke compared to building up this hydrogen infrastructure. And it is very expensive to build these factories that makes the hydrogen and the fueling station compared to just putting up 50 superchargers. And Tesla will put up 60,000 new version 3 superchargers in the next 2 years. Just Tesla. Give me your best guess of how many hydrogen stations will be put up in the next 2 years. If the pace stays about the same, it will not be many, because everything about hydrogen is so expensive. There is no economical reason for anyone to make or use green hydrogen. This is also why it's moving so slow. And when it comes to using a lot of energy to produce the hydrogen in the first place and compress it into a gas electric and transporting it around the world, the energy losses of hydrogen is huge. Just look at this chart. Hydrogen is only slightly better than fossil fuel. And this chart is even with transport and environment's future glasses on. But just look at the energy efficiency of the car running directly on electricity. So instead of trying to make all of this very costly, complicated system work, remember all of this infrastructure doesn't exist yet for hydrogen. But we can remove all of that and just go directly from renewable energy to end use. And also because hydrogen is so inefficient, we need at least twice the amount of renewable energy sources to make it than we would if we just made everything run directly on electricity than making green hydrogen. So even before we come to building the whole infrastructure for hydrogen, for the very expensive fuel, for the very expensive car, we have to spend twice the amount of money on building renewable energy to make the darn thing. Because the best case scenario for hydrogen, say you build the perfect machine to make hydrogen, you will only convert about 70% of the energy into hydrogen. This is just a law of physics, and that is before you store hydrogen. Then you use about 15% of that 70% of energy just to compress the hydrogen gas so you can store it. So now you're down to about 60% of the energy left. And then you have to use it, and if you put it through a fuel cell, which is the most efficient way, you will only get about 70% of the 60% of energy. So now you're down to about 42% energy efficiency. This is the best case scenario if you do everything perfect, which we don't, and this is why T&E thinks this will not happen before 2050. Right now, we're about 33% efficiency. So this technology will never get better than this because we cannot escape the laws of physics. So 42% energy efficiency is the best we will ever get out of this technology that is extremely expensive in every single way. And at the end of the day, what the hydrogen is powering is an electric motor. So we do all of this work, all of these loops and hoops just to make electricity, convert into hydrogen to make electricity to power a motor. This is just stupid. The hydrogen will never work. It is just stupid complicated. It is too costly and inefficient. And when we're talking about CO2 emission, we need green hydrogen, and therefore we need at least twice the amount of renewable energy to make it work than just using the electricity generated by the renewable to run everything. This is just stupid. So even looking 30 years out in the future, this hydrogen technology doesn't even look promising because we already know how efficient it can be. And we need green hydrogen, so we need renewables. But if we look at battery technology and solar technology, we have just begun the journey. All of that will become better. And people have a tendency to look towards the future and argue about things that can't be done because of the technology we have today. That makes no sense. That is what I call backwards thinking, because looking forward to the future with today's technology or yesterday's technology doesn't make sense. We can't look at a target of zero emission in 2050, almost 30 years from now, and talk about the technology we have today and think that is what we will be using in 30 years to solve these problems. Are you kidding me? That would be like looking 30 years back and think that was the technology we will be using today. So let's just try to do that. Look 30 years back to 1992 and see what technology looked like, because this is what the computer system looked like in 1992. Windows 3.1. On a computer that looked like this, and this is IBM's first ThinkPad that came out in 1992. So this is the state-of-the-art computer you see right here. Apple had just the year before, in 1991, released their PowerBook. So no, we didn't email each other back then because it didn't really become a thing before 1995. So no, people used fax machines to communicate, and no one was surfing the internet because the first web browser was not released until 1993. Yep, Google, Amazon, eBay, Yahoo, YouTube didn't exist back then. Amazon didn't get started before 1994, Google before 1998, YouTube not before 2005. And Motorola, you remember them, introduced the first digital hand-sized phone in 1992. This bad boy. Much better looking than the previous one, right? And these were the cars we were driving. Yeah, I know Ford hasn't really evolved much. 99% of all the cars they make today still run on the same fuel and pretty much the same efficiency and still look pretty much the same inside as well. No wonder when people come for something like that and get into a Tesla, they feel like they are in a spaceship, and not just because of the acceleration. And people didn't believe in the electric car back then because batteries were still expensive and very bad. Remember the lithium battery, Sony had just commercialized it the year before in 1991. Before that it was just in the lab and prototypes. Remember GM's EV1 that came out in 1996? It was running on less than 20 kilowatt hours of lead acid batteries. It had 60 kilometers of range, which took 8 hours to charge. No wonder people didn't believe in the electric car if they thought this was as good that this could ever get. But then fast forward to today and we have a monster called Tesla Model S Plaid that has just given a hardcore smackdown to the entire ICE industry. The whole car industry is being disrupted by the thing we laughed at not even 30 years ago. Some people still laughed 10 years ago. But now a Tesla has up to 400 miles of range, charging 120 kilometers in 5 minutes, and can do a 0 to 60 in under 2 seconds. If we could go back in time to 1992 and show them this car, no one would believe it. Just go back 10 years and people will probably have a hard time believing it. So this is what we need to keep in mind when we're talking about the future. We can't hardly imagine what kind of crazy technologies we will have in 30 years from now. And the advancement of technology is only speeding up. I think it would be hard even to imagine how the world is going to look like in just 10 years with all the disruptions coming this decade, let alone 30 years from now. But one thing is for sure, the EV is as bad as it will ever be right now. It will only become better and cheaper going forward. Charging speed and range will only be going up, but hydrogen will never get better than 42% efficiency. Yes, it will become cheaper, but not in the pace of the batteries and renewable energy will, and it will take more than twice the renewable energy to make it. It doesn't make sense. So when people say batteries are not good enough for planes and big cargo ship, well, again, we have to keep in mind that the technology is still pretty much in its infancy. And even though this is the case, we are already seeing electric ships. We have electric ferries already operating here in Denmark, where I live. But the world's first fully electric and autonomous cargo ship was unveiled in Norway in November last year, a small but promising step towards reducing the maritime industry climate footprint. And the implications are huge. Just this one ship will eliminate the need for around 40,000 truck journeys a year that before was fueled by polluting diesel, just from one ship. And furthermore, this ship is also autonomous, so not only are they testing the electric cargo ship, they are testing the fully electric and autonomous cargo ship. This is the first step. This is the EV1 of the electric autonomous cargo ship. It will only become better from here on out. Right now it has the equivalent of almost 100 Tesla Model 3 batteries inside it. But even with the battery technology Tesla has today, with the 4680 cell they are producing right now, they would be able to cut the amount of batteries in half, including the price of the batteries will be able to be cut in half. And Tesla has already shown they can make a semi-truck work as well, and even much better and cheaper than owning a traditional semi-truck. So just try to imagine where we will be in 10 or 20 years from now. We will no doubt be able to go all electric. It's just a matter of constantly improving the storage system called batteries. And we have already seen that play out over the last 30 years. And it will continue over the next 30 years. We haven't even scratched the surface of solid-state battery yet. Or maybe it will be something completely different we don't even know about yet. But it won't be hydrogen. It is too costly, too inefficient, too complicated, and a very old school way of thinking of fuel. You have to go somewhere to get it as well. I get my fuel at home. I will never get a car that I have to go somewhere to get fuel. What's that all about? That's just so inconvenient as well. And oh yeah, I almost forgot, people always talk about EVs and their dangerous battery fires. Well, let me show you hydrogen's full potential. Yeah, you're pretty much just driving around on a bomb. And we have already seen some hydrogen stations blowing up, even though there aren't many worldwide. And hydrogen buses has also been blowing up. And we already have a lot of electric buses. Just in my city here in Aarhus, we have a lot of electric buses. So what is the need for those dangerous and much more expensive hydrogen buses? There is no need. And like flying wasn't scary enough, I don't want to be flying on a plane propelled by a hydrogen bomb. No thanks. Yeah, the more I learn about hydrogen, the less sense it makes. And the more I learn about the benefits of renewables and batteries, the more sense it makes. We will have an abundance of energy in the future. We should all just have listened to Elon Musk back in the days.
I don't want to turn this into a debate on hydrogen fuel cells because I just think that they're extremely silly. And the people have published, there's multiple sort of rebuttals of it online. It's just very difficult to make hydrogen and store it and use it in a car. Hydrogen is an energy storage mechanism. It's not a source of energy. So you have to get that hydrogen from somewhere. If you get that hydrogen from water, so you're splitting H2O, the electrolysis is extremely inefficient as an energy process. If you say took a solar panel and used the energy from that solar panel to just charge a battery pack directly, compared to try to split water, take the hydrogen, dump the oxygen, compress the hydrogen to an extremely high pressure or liquefy it, and then put it in a car and run a fuel cell. it is about half the efficiency. It's terrible. Like, so why would you do that? It makes no sense. And then hydrogen has very low density. It's a pernicious molecule, likes to get all over the place. You get metal embrittlement from hydrogen. If you get a hydrogen leak, it's an invisible gas. You can't even tell that it's leaking. But then it's extremely flammable when it does, and has an invisible flame. If you're going to pick an energy storage mechanism, hydrogen is an incredibly dumb one to pick. You should just pick methane. That's much easier, or propane. Hydrogen fuel cell, the best case hydrogen fuel cell doesn't win against the current case batteries. So then.
And thank you for watching. And until next time, take care out there and be nice.